We are being mass drugged and poisoned in our food system with 10,000 virtually unregulated chemicals, which have bought off papers saying that they are safe.
Hello and welcome to the Doge and Maha News channel. In today's video, we're going to focus on Make America Healthy Again, and we're going to watch Joe Rogan interviewing Calley and Calley Means. Calley Means is the author of the book Good Energy, and by the way, there is a link below to that book if you want to check that out. In this part of the interview, Calley Means is really talking about the research that the FDA and the NIH does when it comes to allowing chemicals into our food system. And I thought this was really interesting, and I wanted to share it with you guys.
One thing about the research, we're one of the only countries in the world where the burden of proof for harm, like we allow these chemicals to just enter our food system. We have 10,000 chemicals in our food system. Europe, only 400, because they have to show that it's safe before they use it. We're allowed to use it, and then only if there's issues that crop up do people have to do research. So
wait a second. Is this true? I mean, that kind of blows my mind. Here we are in America, the greatest country in the world, and we are allowing chemicals to be used on our food before they are shown to be safe. Whereas in other countries like in Europe, they have to prove that the chemical is safe first before they can use it. But here in America, they can go ahead and use it first. And then if something comes up, like maybe people start getting sick, then they have to show that it is a danger or a hazard or toxic, and then they remove it. That is backwards, big time.
There's this ridiculous GRAS, generally recognized as safe designation, which is essentially a company self-assesses whether the chemical that they are creating is generally recognized as safe. No one's overseeing it. And Brigham talks about this, like compassion for the FDA. They're overwhelmed. There's a lot of stuff to do.
Wait a second. So companies can self-regulate? They can say, oh, this chemical is safe to be used on our food or safe to be used in our food. That's wild to me. And no one's double checking that data. I mean, do you think there's some corruption there? Most likely.
Kind of like a hoarder's house. Where do we even start? I don't necessarily know if I buy that. I think that it's pretty bad and bought off that we have all these chemicals. But they basically just have to self-designate if it's generally recognized as safe, and then it can go into our food system. One thing that I find really interesting is that I really reflect on a lot is what is the difference between a food chemical and a drug? They're all just synthetic molecules that are made in factories, in labs by scientists. Do you know what the difference is? Intended use.
So the difference between a food chemical and a drug is intended use. Wow. It makes sense because they're both chemicals. They're both made in a lab. But we can put some of it on our food. And companies can kind of self-regulate and say that it's safe to use.
So basically, if the intended use is for food, you can synthesize almost anything you want and put it in food. We are being mass drugged and poisoned in our food system with 10,000 virtually unregulated chemicals, which have bought off papers saying that they are safe.
Wow. So I've heard the number 10,000 before. Self-regulated chemicals, and here she's saying they have papers that have been bought off to say that they are safe. So they have research that has been done and likely bought off to say that their chemicals are safe to use in our food system. Ooh, wow.
I mean, you look at what happened with all the Monsanto litigation about non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. They had to release this whole thing called the Monsanto Papers. They were declassified, where they ghost wrote scientific papers saying that glyphosate is safe. So there's all this corruption in there where basically we have 10,000 unregulated chemicals in our food system and we're getting sick as hell, obviously. And then you've got the evidence-based people saying, well, we need to have a 10-year longitudinal study to show that glyphosate is causing XYZ disease. And it's obviously that's not the right approach because, first of all, it is the synergistic combination of all the toxins that are now in our environment that are leading to all these pleiotropic health issues. That's very hard to study. So we have to get our heads out of our ass and use our common sense and realize what's going on and not wait 10 years with these, NIH funded studies that are going to be corrupted.
I mean, she's got a great point. I mean, we have this chemical, we think it might be toxic. Oh, we have to do a 10-year long study to determine if it's toxic. First of all, why is it in our food in the first place if we don't know it's safe? That makes me crazy. And then the fact that people are going to come back and say, oh, I mean, it might be toxic, but to determine that, we need to do a 10-year study on it. Well, it's too late then. And the other part of it is most likely that research is probably going to be corrupt. Money is going to be coming in from the companies that own these chemicals because they want it to be approved to go into our food still. So, yeah, there's just going to be some corruption there, and it's not going to be actual real science.
And, I think, so that's just one thing about the food chemicals. I just wanted to add to your point, Cal, like some other dates, like, you look at the processed food emergence. Processed food really didn't start taking off until these mergers. There was a little bit of a start of it. Ultra processed foods did not exist before World War II. We needed to have shelf stable food for soldiers and things like that we could ship, and so there were maybe some good intentions there. But then there was an opportunity there that got seen, and we can also weaponize the feminist movement against being in the kitchen, you're a slave. You don't, that your values outside the home. You need to climb the corporate ladder. Here, have this convenience food that we basically made for soldiers, and we're going to tell you that this is actually your liberation. So of course we got people not cooking. Families aren't eating together anymore. Kids are eating 67% of children's calories now are ultra processed foods. These means foods that come from a factory made by food scientists, not.
So I'm 54 years old. I was born in 1970. I obviously grew up in the 70s and the 80s. And I remember my mom typically would cook a meal for us, but it was considered a special meal when we got to have some TV dinners. Do you remember TV dinners? I can't remember how this was before microwaves, I think. So my mom would cook them in the oven, and they came in this little foil tray things, and you kind of peel back the top, and you felt like you were some kind of a astronaut eating some futuristic food, and it was this really cool thing. And that's how it was presented to you. Right. And so that was part of the marketing for us to start getting into this ultra processed foods and these foods with really long shelf spans and things like that. I just remember peeling back the TV dinner and being so excited because it wasn't homemade. I look back at that now and go, wow, that was really gross.
Not just processed, ultra processed. The highest form of processing, 67% of calories.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead about 10 minutes here because they get into a conversation about high fructose corn syrup, which is really a good conversation. However, I did cover that part of the video in a previous video. So if you want to check that out, you can always check out my Maha playlist. That video is there. But we're going to continue at the point of the video where they are discussing more about research.
And the research and the evidence-based thing and this cult of the science, they love to ignore that. The idea of synergistic effects of this overwhelming breaking of our cellular resources is just conveniently forgotten because we study things in isolation. That's literally the definition of how a double-blind, placebo-controlled study happens. It's one variable, and one thing that you're testing.
You can't do it on food.
That doesn't make sense. We live in a toxic stew.
The only answer of double-blind placebo-controlled studies, which every guest comes on is just that's just the gold standard. Everyone just accepts that that's what you need. A double-blind placebo-controlled study, the only answer is a pill.
Oh, wow. I never thought about that before. But the only answer of a double-blind placebo-controlled study is a pill. That's a fact, because what are you studying? The effectiveness of a pill. Yes or no, does this pill work?
Essentially. You can't test psychedelics on that way. You can't test food. You can't test exercise. You can't blind those things. So anything that actually recognizes the unison and the interconnectivity of why we're getting sick can't be studied through a double-blind placebo-controlled study. You actually have the FDA that's basically created. You saw this with the recent MDMA decision. It's basically rigged that the only thing that can be approved through the top way we study things and approve drugs is a synthetic pill.
Oh my goodness. That blows my mind. Did you think about that? Did you know about that? The only thing that can be approved through this approved form of science, the double blind, placebo controlled study, is a pill. That's it. You can't, like you said, you can't study food, you can't study exercise, you can't study the environmental effects. It's just one pill. Does it work or not?
That's the only thing that it can basically lead to through a double-blind placebo-controlled study.
It's like with vaccines. It's like, yeah, I bet that one vaccine probably isn't causing autism. But what about the 20 that they're getting before 18 months? Like, we don't look at it in synergistic, you know, and so that's a big problem. And this is where the cult of the science, and I say the science specifically because science is beautiful, using the scientific method and using that way of inquiry into the natural world is a beautiful art. But
I love the way she says that, and that is true. It is a beautiful art because you're looking at something from a standpoint of curiosity. You want to know, you want to discover, you want to find out. You're not looking from the perspective of some kind of political bent, or you want a certain kind of outcome. That is not real science.
Weaponizing papers that are often bought for or corrupted, and you know, the leaders of some of our key medical journals have actually even said that 50% of scientific research that published ends up being wrong. So it's bought for, corrupted, or wrong.
I mean, that's a great point too. I mean, we're told to follow the science, but 50% of the time, science, we find out that it's wrong. I mean, that's okay. Science, that's what science is all about. We try and discover things. We try and learn things. But when we are saying, okay, it's a science, you must do it, that's wrong because, like she said, 50% of the time, the science is wrong itself. You know, we're learning, we're growing, we need more studies, that kind of thing. So the cult of science is definitely something we need to be careful of.
We rely on this, and one interesting trend that we're seeing in our world is that if we do choose to put dots together or use our intuition, our God-given intuition, anything other than this particular way of examining things, you are dangerous. You are dangerous. And I think that that's something we need to really question.
Wow. Did you ever think about that? I never had. Like the double-blind placebo-controlled study, which is kind of the gold standard study, I guess, in science, at least when it comes to pharmacy. You know, the only outcome for that is a pill or some kind of drug or some kind of injection. Wow. So that really limits your results. And when you're talking about doing studies in the medical field, the only outcome is some kind of pill or drug. And that's wrong. I mean, so they're not really able to study things like food and exercise and chemicals in our food and different things like that. Or they're not able to really study maybe the combination of drugs or the combination of chemicals in our food or the combination of multiple vaccines. So there's definitely a huge flaw in the medical research field. Plus there's a lot of corruption, papers being made that are bought off, and all sorts of nonsense is happening. So, man, I'm really learning a lot as I'm reviewing these videos. I'm excited about the prospect of making America healthy again and myself healthy again and my family healthy again. So I'm really excited to learn this information. So it's very beneficial to me. I hope it is to you as well. And if you like these videos, please make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you get notified every single day when I upload a new video with more great content like this. Also, if you want to check out some of the other Make America Healthy Again videos that I posted, I do have a playlist right here, and you can click on that and see all the Make America Healthy Again videos. A lot of good information. I'm learning a lot on this journey, and I hope you are too. I hope you'll join me. Thanks a lot for watching, and take care.